This is Native American Heritage Month. This is part 4 of our series, and we are demonstrating the continuous existence of an Arawak Taino indiera in Puerto Rico. In the previous videos, we presented historical evidence of Taino presence from the Spanish invasion of Puerto Rico in 1493 up to the year 1899. Now we will look at what the censuses sent to the Spanish crown revealed from 1827 to the last census conducted before the U.S. invasion in 1898. When you think of a Native American, what comes to mind? Do you have a specific stereotype in your head? Should the hair be black, brown, or blonde? What about the texture? Straight, curly, or afro? How long should it be? Can they wear it short, or must it be long with a traditional style? Do you believe that a Native American in 2025 should have a specific skin color? Should they have a specific eye color? What about their height? Should they all be short? Or can there be tall and medium height individuals too? Should they all be very thin? Or can they be of any body type? When you imagine a descendant of a Taino in the 21st century, how do you picture them? Do you still think they live in bohíos, in the jungle, without electricity, clean water, or roads? What does a Native American look like in 2025? Like the models in magazines? Should all Native people look the same? Have you ever thought about that? After so many centuries, what should a Taino and their descendants look like? I invite you to reflect. After generations of mixing and coexistence among different races, we don't all look the same, yet we share the same heritage, the Boricua blood. This is part 4 of the evidence of the indieras in Puerto Rico, the Taino continuity in the colonial censuses. In 1827, the census of the Royal Audiencia of Puerto Rico recorded an approximate population of 190,000 inhabitants, although it does not explicitly mention indigenous or Taino people, who were officially considered extinct or assimilated since the 1500s. The official Don Alejandro Ramirez Cordova, commonly known as Alejandro Ramirez or Ramirez de Arellano, described the peasants of the island's mountainous interior, especially in Utuado, Adjuntas, Lares, Maricao, Yauco, and San Germán, using the term pardos jíbaros de las sierras medias, brown-skinned jíbaros of the mid-mountain ranges. Jíbaro is the Taino word used to describe the man of the mountains. Jiba means mountain, so Jíbaro literally translates to man of the mountain. The official Ramirez de Arellano described them as rough, hard-working people, dedicated to cultivating cassava, corn, and coffee on communal lands. He highlights their loyalty to the crown, but also their extreme poverty, isolation, and attachment to ancient customs, a euphemism used to describe indigenous traditions such as the use of conucos and hammocks. These groups inhabited a territory of about 401 square miles, and the report officially identifies the areas of Utuado, Adjuntas, Lares, Maricao, Yauco, and San Germán as the Indieras, a historic refuge of free indigenous people since the 1500s. Cordova considered this area a stronghold of Borinqueño loyalty, but warned that its marginalization, lack of roads, schools, and commerce, threatened social stability. He recommended reforms to integrate them into the general population of the island of Puerto Rico. This census is not available online. You must visit the Archivo General de Indias in person to find it yourself. The limited access to Puerto Rico's historical documents represents one of the deepest wounds in our collective identity as Puerto Ricans. For centuries, the colonial archives containing the true history of the island, especially those from the Spanish period, have remained undigitized or even abandoned in deteriorating storage facilities. This lack of effort and diligence from both the Puerto Rican and Spanish governments has led to the loss of invaluable information about our past. Many of the documents that tell how our people were formed, who the first recorded inhabitants were, how their institutions functioned, and how our society evolved under colonization, remain inaccessible to the public. The General Archive of Puerto Rico is actively digitizing documents from the 1800s onward. But our history did not begin when the Americans were about to arrive. Our history began long before that. What should be public heritage remains locked away in boxes, damaged by time, humidity, and institutional neglect. This negligence not only hinders the work of historians and genealogists, but also deprives the people of Puerto Rico of their fundamental right to know their own history. The lack of digitization and proper preservation of censuses, registries, notarial records, and official correspondence from the colonial period has allowed the government to silence large portions of our national memory and reshape history into a false narrative. Preserving and digitizing these documents is not a luxury, but a historical necessity. Recovering these archives would allow us to reconstruct our national identity with accuracy, reclaim the truth of our roots, and ensure that future generations have access to Puerto Rico's complete history, free from colonial filters and the gaps created by neglect. This is the year 1830. In 1830, Captain General Miguel de la Torre y Pando, known as the Count of Torrepando and Governor of Puerto Rico between 1822 and 1837, sent King Ferdinand VII a report containing a detailed description of the mountain Jibaros, located in the same regions of the Central Mountain Range. He described them as rough but loyal subjects, strong and copper-skinned, with an untamed spirit inherited from the ancient inhabitants. They lived in scattered bohíos, cultivated conucos, and defended the island with machetes and shotguns. Although he praised them as a bulwark of Borinqueño tranquility, he criticized their ignorance and poverty, proposing education and road construction to prevent uprisings like those in Haiti or Venezuela. This document is not digitized for online access, but the complete physical copy is preserved at the Archivo General de Indias in Seville, Spain. There is also a copy at the Archivo General de Puerto Rico, where copies, indexes, or references of the original can be requested. This is the year 1860. In 1860, Fernando Cotoneri Chacon, who served as Governor and Captain General of Puerto Rico, supervised a census on December 26, 1860. In this census, the people of Puerto Rico were classified into three categories: white, pardo, and black. This division served a mainly economic purpose, allowing the government to collect taxes, tributes, in an organized way. It also served an administrative purpose, helping to register, identify, and count the population as citizens recognized by the colonial government for tax collection. Thus, thousands of natives were absorbed into the colonial system under the label of pardos, erasing their indigenous identity. While unrecognized, they paid no taxes, but once classified as pardos, the Spanish government taxed them for their ancestral lands, lands that already belonged to them. In Puerto Rico, being pardo meant you were a free person, typically a field laborer or artisan. You were not an African slave, but neither were you Spanish, according to the Spanish colonial categories. The pardos were free people born in Puerto Rico. The mixed or mulatto population referred to people of combined heritage, any mixture of Puerto Ricans with Spaniards or Africans. And finally, enslaved people were referred to as negros or morenos. The 1860 census stated that 48% of Puerto Rico's population was classified as pardo. By 1860, the Spanish government had officially classified the Taínos as extinct since the 1500s. From that point on, the indigenous population was recorded under the label pardo. The governor did this to control the indigenous population and legally collect taxes from them. That census recorded 244,263 white peninsulares or criollos on the island. Landowners and urban residents concentrated mainly in San Juan and Ponce. The governor describes a mountain-dwelling subgroup with copper-colored skin and archaic customs, dedicated to subsistence living in the highlands. He calls them pardos, and reports that there are 259,633 of them. He also mentions that there are 52,000 free Morenos, meaning black people who are not enslaved. The 1860 census recorded 27,412 enslaved Pardos working on sugar plantations, demonstrating that 38 years before the U.S. invasion, indigenous slaves were still being reported in Puerto Rico. He locates them in the same indieras, where their isolation fosters idleness and smuggling, although their loyalty makes them useful in militias against Haitian threats. He recommends their integration through infrastructure and education. The most important thing about the 1860 census is the document called Puerto Rico, Census of Population, Housing, Professions, Arts and Trades 1860, available on the social networks platform ISUU. In this report, it can be read, and I quote, "The population is mostly Parda and rural, dedicated to subsistence farming in rugged terrain, using archaic methods that require improvement for economic progress. The report records 7,800 free Pardos in Utuado, described as a mountainous area with a scattered population living on ranches and small farms, where most were laborers on coffee plantations and lived on a subsistence economy. They made up 55% of Utuado's population. In Maricao, the Pardos made up 57% of the population. There were 3,200 people, and it is described, and I quote, "Mountainous area in the west, isolated huts on high river plains. Pardos predominate as farmers, low commerce, dependent on Saint-Germain. In Saint-Germain, 50% of the population was Parda." He describes the municipality, and I quote, "Mixed coastal inland area. Pardos in the mountain valleys cultivate tobacco and coffee. Free population of color living on highland farms. The area of Las Marias, which was not yet an established town, is mentioned, and I quote, "Recently separated from Saint-Germain, forested mountain ranges with cattle ranches, free Pardos living in scattered huts. There were 2,700 people, meaning 57% of the population in that area were free Pardos." It is interesting to see that the 1860 census presents results in exact round numbers, which shows that the census data were neither reliable nor real. They were population estimates. No population census yields perfectly round numbers like those found in this one. This suggests that the figures may have been falsified and that the indigenous presence in the mountains was actually greater. But for an official of that time, acknowledging autonomous native communities was politically inconvenient. This demonstrated that by the late 19th century, Spain lacked real control over the entire island, while indigenous communities maintained autonomy in the mountains. To conceal this reality, the governor altered the census figures to avoid appearing incompetent before the crown. The governor's concern in this document was, and I quote, "The Pardos of the interior, especially in districts such as Utuado and Maricao, engage in small-scale farming and the raising of minor livestock, using rudimentary tools. Their dispersion in elevated huts makes it difficult to collect taxes for the crown and to provide instruction, but their loyalty to the sovereign is noteworthy. Only 10% of rural Pardos can read, useful in local militias for their mountain strength. The emphasis was on Pardos from Saint-Germain and Utuado as recruits. In other words, his concern was that he could not recruit the indigenous mountain people into the militia because they did not know how to read or write. This is the year 1877. By 1877, with 723,681 inhabitants, the free Pardos numbered approximately 298,000. The census was carried out by an island commission of the National Institute of Statistics of Spain. Its preparation began under Segundo de la Portilla and was completed during the administration of José María de Zúñiga, at a time when Spanish colonial power in the Americas was already in decline. He highlights the copper-skinned people of the mountains of the Central Cordillera and emphasizes in his report the rural population dedicated to cultivating coffee and tobacco on communal lands. He describes them as rough people with ancient wheat-colored skin, descendants of the island's early inhabitants, loyal but resistant to civilization due to the lack of roads and education. After the Grito de Lares of 1868, which arose in the indieras of Lares and included people from Utuado and San Germán as well, agrarian reforms and independence for Puerto Rico were proposed, inspired by the libertarian movements of South America. In other words, those who took part in the Grito de Lares were the people from the mountain indieras of Puerto Rico. They were organized to free the island from the Spanish government that oppressed them. The 1877 census was highly imprecise because there was great political instability on the island. The governor of Puerto Rico resigned while the census was being conducted, and the Grito de Lares took place, leaving the island without a governor for several months. You can consult the 1877 census, titled Report on the Census of the Island of Puerto Rico, published in 1878 by the National Institute of Statistics of Spain, at the General Archive of the Indies in Seville through the Pares portal. Search for Puerto Rico Census 1877 or the file Ultramar 458. A free registration is required to download or request the digital reproductions. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe to watch the final part of the series, where we'll show the last Spanish census and what the U.S. government found in the Indiera after the invasion of Puerto Rico. See you next time.